Someone asked Gandhi back in 1942, hey, when did you decide it was time for India to be independent? And his answer pointed to one specific moment, back in 1917, in a place called Champaran. This wasn't just another protest. It was the moment he decided it was time to urge the departure of the British. So what exactly happened in this little district that ended up setting the course for India's entire future? Let's get into it. So, how does a single farmer kickstart a revolution? I mean, really, think about that. Because at the heart of this whole Champaran story, that's exactly what happened. It wasn't some powerful general or a slick politician who got the ball rolling. Nope. It was one incredibly persistent, basically unknown peasant. All right, let's dive into chapter 1 and meet this guy. Who was this man who basically managed to change the course of history just by refusing to take no for an answer? His name was Rajkumar Shukla, and honestly, on paper, you wouldn't think much of him. He's described as this poor, kind of gaunt sharecropper. He even said himself he was illiterate but resolute. But man, that resolute part is the key. He traveled all the way to the 1916 Indian National Congress session with just one mission: find this guy named Gandhi and get him to help his people. That's it. And when we say resolute, we mean really resolute. Just look at this timeline. It shows his sheer tenacity. Gandhi was a busy guy, right? He had appointments all over India. But Shukla, he just followed him everywhere. To Kanpur, then all the way back to Gandhi's ashram. He even stayed there for weeks just hanging around, never leaving his side, with one simple plea: fix a date. And you know what? That incredible persistence, it finally worked. So what was this big injustice that Shukla was so fired up about? Well, it all came down to this really exploitative contract. Picture this. You're a peasant in Champaran, and you're forced to plant 15% of your land with indigo. And then you have to hand over the entire harvest to your British landlords as rent. The whole thing. But then, a curveball. Germany develops synthetic indigo, and suddenly the natural stuff is worthless. So you think the landlords would just end the contracts, right? Wrong. Instead, they demanded the peasants pay them compensation to be released from an agreement that was now totally useless. It was just pure, blatant extortion. So, Gandhi gets there, he understands the problem. But he doesn't just show up and start giving fiery speeches or organizing protests. No, that wasn't his style. He started with a methodical, fact-finding investigation. And that, of course, immediately put him on a collision course with colonial power. Gandhi's approach was classic him. Get the facts first. He started by meeting with the local lawyers who were supposed to be representing the sharecroppers, and he actually, gently, scolded them for charging these poor farmers such high fees. Then, he went straight to the sources of power to start gathering information. The very first wall he hit was the British Landlords Association. Their secretary just flat out refused to give him any information. Why? Because Gandhi was, in their eyes, an outsider. Gandhi's reply was simple: I'm no outsider. So he goes up the chain of command to the official British commissioner. And the response there, it was even more hostile. I mean, according to Gandhi himself, the commissioner proceeded to bully me and advised me forthwith to leave. So he wasn't just being unhelpful, he was actively trying to intimidate Gandhi and kick him out. But Gandhi, of course, he didn't leave. Instead, he just went on to Motihari, which was the capital of Champaran. And that's where he got this: a formal, official notice. The message was loud and clear: quit Champaran. This wasn't a suggestion anymore. This was a direct order from the British government. So what does he do? His response was so simple, so direct. He signed the receipt for the notice, and then right there on the paper, he wrote, "I will disobey the order." That's it. That one little act of defiance led straight to a court summons for the very next day. The stage was set for a major showdown. All right, this brings us to the climax of the whole confrontation. The government, they probably thought they were just putting one man on trial. What they didn't realize was that they were about to see the power of an entire people waking up. The next morning, the town of Motihari was just black with people, thousands upon thousands of peasants. Most of them had no idea about Gandhi's record in South Africa. All they knew was that there was a Mahatma, a great soul, who wanted to help them, and now he was in trouble with the authorities. That massive, spontaneous crowd around the courthouse, that was their first taste of freedom from fear. Inside the courtroom, the officials were just stunned. They were powerless. And Gandhi, he pleads guilty. But then he explains himself. He tells the judge
He was caught in a conflict of duties. On one hand, his duty not to be a lawbreaker, but on the other, his duty to the people of Champaran, this humanitarian and national service. He said he had to choose the higher law of our being, the voice of conscience. And that moment of solidarity, it changed everything. Gandhi turned to the prominent lawyers there and asked them, "So, what are you going to do if I go to prison?" And at first they said, well, they just go home. But after they talked it over, they realized that would be a shameful desertion. They went back to Gandhi and told him, "We are ready to follow you into jail." And right then, Gandhi knew. He explained, the Battle of Champaran is won. The government was totally backed into a corner. I mean, think about it. You've got this one man who is more than willing to go to jail. You've got a group of the region's top lawyers ready to go with him, and you've got thousands of peasants right outside the door. They had no choice. They folded. The lieutenant governor ordered the whole case to be dropped. For the very first time in modern India, civil disobedience had triumphed. But here's the thing. Winning in court, that was just step one. The real work was only just beginning. Now, Gandhi had to go after the economic injustice, but his goal was so much bigger than just getting some money back for these folks. So an official commission gets set up, and the evidence against the landlords is just overwhelming. They have to agree to pay refunds. And this leads to a really fascinating negotiation. Gandhi asks for a 50% refund. The planters, they try to call his bluff. They think if they offer a ridiculously low amount, he'll refuse and the whole thing will get stuck. So they offer a measly 25%. And to their absolute shock, Gandhi just says, okay. He accepts it immediately. So why? Why did he accept such a small amount? Well, for Gandhi, it was never really about the money. The real victory was the fact that these British landlords who had been acting like they were above the law for decades were now being forced to surrender not just part of the money, but also a huge part of their prestige. The peasants saw it. They saw that they had rights, that they had people who would defend them. They learned courage. And that victory, that new sense of courage, set the stage for Gandhi's real goal in Champaran. See, it was never just about political rights or economic justice. It was about building a new kind of free Indian from the ground up. Gandhi's work was far from finished. He looked around and saw the deep social and cultural problems in the villages, and he knew that true freedom meant more than just a political win. He put out a call for volunteers, and people came. His disciples, his wife Kasturabai, even his youngest son showed up to help. And together, they started opening primary schools. They began teaching basic sanitation and personal hygiene, and they even brought in volunteer doctors to tackle the awful health conditions. You know, there's this one moment that just perfectly sums up his whole message. A friend of his, an English pacifist named C.F. Andrews, was a huge follower, and he was ready to stay in Champaran and help the cause. The Indian lawyers, they thought this was a fantastic idea, having an Englishman on their side would look great. But Gandhi, he was totally against it. He told them that looking for a prop in an Englishman just because he was English showed the weakness of their own hearts. And that right there, that was the ultimate lesson of Champaran. It was a masterclass in self-reliance. As Gandhi taught them, if your cause is just, you have to rely on yourselves to win the battle. Indian independence, helping the poor farmers, it was all connected to this one incredibly powerful idea. So think about that. From one single farmer's stubborn plea, a movement grew that didn't just free a district from being exploited, but it actually taught a whole nation a new way to fight for its freedom. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our own lives, in our own communities today, what does that powerful lesson of self-reliance really mean for us?